Okay, let's keep working on our task list now. At the moment, they're simply list items, but we probably want, at the very least, a checkbox. And when you check it, that will submit a form that will mark this particular task as completed. Okay, we'll go to our project/show view. Here's our list of tasks. And we'll say right here, we need some kind of form. And within here, I have a little snippet, Bulma checkbox field. This will be for the completed status. And I can take that here. Okay, and then I don't think we need a list item here. We'll just do a div for now. Anyways, if we switch back, we now have a form for each task. But at the moment, that form doesn't direct us anywhere. So let's figure out, of course, we're going to do a method of post by default, because that's the only thing the browser recognizes. But if we think about it, we're not creating a new task. We are updating an existing task. So as we learned, the method we would want would be called patch. We're updating some portion of an existing task. Now, what would be the proper endpoint to perform this action? And especially in the early to intermediate days, I think you'll spend a decent amount of time figuring out, what do I want my endpoints to be? What's the proper URI? What makes the most sense? For example, we could submit a patch request to, well, let's think. Our first thought might be projects / whatever the ID is, / the tasks associated with that project with that ID, / the task ID. That would be an option. Very, very common. Another option would be, well, if we're updating a task, we could just shorten it and do a patch request to tasks / ID. And because every task will have a unique ID, this might be a more simple way to do it. But in the real world, you'll see both of these all the time. And I wouldn't say either is a better or worse approach. It just depends on what you want to do there. In general, when I can, I like to keep these URIs as short as possible. The more you nest these resources, it just gets a little tricky and a little confusing, especially when you're building up the URIs that you're going to submit to. So with that in mind, let's go with this approach. /tasks / the task ID. Okay, so now if I give it a refresh, you'll see that each one here has its own form. This will submit a patch request to tasks /1, and this one will submit a patch request to tasks /2. Now, we could add a little submit button here, but let's keep it simple. Let's say when you check this input here, it should submit the form. Okay, maybe later when we talk about some of the JavaScript boilerplate that's included with Laravel, we can convert some of this into Vue components. But for now, I'm just going to inline it. We'll say on change this.form.submit. There's a little bit of JavaScript there. So if we come back and give it a refresh, if I click on this checkbox, you'll see that it does submit the form. But at the moment, we don't have an endpoint set up for this. Okay, so that's our next step. Let's go to our route/web file, and we'll say, when we receive a patch request to /tasks / an ID, that will hit, we could do either tasks controller at update, or in these situations, I will often do project tasks controller. You can do either, but I often do this approach to make it very clear that this controller is for fetching the tasks and manipulating the tasks associated with a given project. Okay, so now if I were to switch back and give this a refresh, the error should change. Yeah, it's trying to reference this controller, but it doesn't exist. Okay, that's our next step. Make me a controller called project tasks controller. All right, we give it a refresh, and now we get a 419. Now, you'll remember a couple episodes ago, we get that 419 because we need to add the CSRF field. We'll add it here. Okay. Now, we can go to our project tasks controller, and we will hit an update method, and I'll say hello. And that should do it. So if we now give it one more shot, there we go. We have hit that method. All right, so it sounds like we need to fetch the associated task. And we've already learned how to do this. We'll pull in the task and then allow route model binding to do its work. Okay, let's die and dump the task, and we should see the task with an ID of 1. There it is. Now at the moment, you can't yet edit the description of a task, even though we should allow for that. The only thing you can do is manipulate the completed status. So take a look at this. Let's dump out all of the request data, give it a refresh, and you'll see completed is set to on, and that's because we checked it. However, if the user unchecked that standard form submission, we would not have a completed attribute at all. I'll show you. Let's give it a refresh, open up Chrome DevTools with Shift-Command-C on my Mac. A little tip here, if I select an element here, or a DOM node, and then I go to my console tab, Chrome Development Tools offers a little helper, or a shortcut. If I do $0, that will give me access to that node. So if I want to submit the form, I'll just do it like that. And now you can see there is no completed attribute because you didn't check it. There's the difference. Now we see it again. Okay. So why don't we say task update the completed status, and we'll make that equal to whether the request has anything called completed in its attribute list. Finally, when we're done, we can redirect anywhere we want, or we can even redirect back to the last page. Okay, let's give it a shot. Go back, refresh, I will check this. And we have an error. Add completed to fillable property to allow for mass assignment. All right, so we ran into that mass assignment issue. And now we're starting to see, we know what we're doing here, but it's still failing. And this is what I was talking about a couple episodes ago. As long as you understand what you're doing, this ends up being a nuisance. So at this point, you might consider extending a parent class. But for now, one more time, we'll just set guarded to an empty array. We can handle this. Okay, we'll give it a refresh one more time. And now we're still not reflecting that completed status here. But I bet if we go to SQL Pro and give it a refresh, sure enough, completed has been set to 1. Okay, so let's just update the input here. Let's close this out. Sounds like right here, we need to conditionally set the checked attribute. So if I add that here, they're all checked. Okay, let's say if the task is completed, then echo out checked, otherwise nothing. All right, give it a refresh, and now we have one task that has been completed. Now, it might be nice to add a little line through here on that condition. We can do that by using a CSS class called text decoration, and then there's a line through value. Okay, so let's switch back, and we'll say, how about this? One more time. Grab that, and we'll add a special class here called isComplete. Okay, so take a look. We give it a refresh, and now if this form or this section is complete, we now have a class that we can reference. So in your CSS file, we don't really have anything yet, do we? If you don't mind, I'm just going to inline it here until we talk about front-end assets. Is complete will be text decoration line through. Okay, so now if we give it a refresh, there we go. Let's go ahead and complete inform school as well. And now that one's done as well. Let's uncheck it, and this one as well. Excellent. So in the next episode, we need to offer users the ability to add a new task to this project.